Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminolly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, The Guardian has published 6 tips to help you read more, and I have notes. So one of the things I get asked most in the comments is, how do you read so much and how can I read more? I have made a few videos about this in the past, but there was an article in The Guardian on Friday that touches on this. They've got 6 tips to help people read more, and I thought it was quite an interesting list. I thought overall it was a pretty good list, but I do have a couple of issues with some of the things they say in the article, so I thought it was worth diving into it and talking about it today. Some of the things they recommend are things I've talked about on the channel before that have helped me read more, so if you haven't seen those videos, you may find this a useful kind of summary of my thoughts on how to read more, as well as some tips from experts that The Guardian has got together. So the title of the article actually sums it up very nicely, which is how to put your phone down and get into the habit of reading books. That really is like the central tip, is put your phone down and just try reading. For me, reading should always be first and foremost about enjoyment. And if you can find books that you enjoy and you are not distracted by other things, particularly your phone — I think the phone is the biggest distraction we have in our modern lives — if you can get away from distractions and find a book you enjoy, you will probably find that you enjoy reading and get into reading more. Anyway, let me go through the Guardian's 6 tips. So the first one of those is keep your phone as far away as possible. So I completely agree with that. I think if you can put your phone in a different room, if you can switch it off, just get it away from you when you're trying to read. We're so used to just instinctively, in an addicted way, just picking up our phones and just checking them. And as soon as you check one thing, I find sometimes when I'm reading, there'll be something in the book that I want to learn more about. There'll be a reference to something, and I'll pick up my phone just to Google that particular thing. And 10 minutes later, I've ended up down a rabbit hole, checking notifications and things like that. So I think getting your phone as far away from you as possible is definitely a really good tip. If that kind of thing does happen to you, where there's something in the book you want to know more about, just make a note of it, write it down on a piece of paper and come back to it later. You don't need to, we don't always need to get access to all the information in the world immediately. And I think that's something we've become used to with our phones. There's an interesting comment in here actually, which suggests that there's research that if people have their phones with them, they are less good at problem solving than if they haven't got their phones with them, because they just rely on their phones for problem solving. So I hadn't heard of that research, but it definitely feels like it would ring true with me. Okay, the second one I don't agree with. I don't agree with the title. I agree with some of the kind of spirit of it, I guess. So the title is Read Physical Books and Take Notes. So I don't agree with either of those things. I'm not a big note taker. I find that note taking slows me down when I'm reading. I do take notes sometimes if there's a book I know I'm going to review on the channel, but generally speaking, I just read the book. I don't worry about taking notes. And I definitely don't agree that you should only read physical books, or even that reading physical books will help you to read more. At least 50% of what I read digitally on e-ink devices, and I find that to be just as good a way of consuming books as reading physical books. Interestingly though, when you dig into this one a bit more, what the tip is really about is always having a book with you that isn't on your phone. So I always have an e-ink device with me when I'm out and about. If I'm going to work or whatever, I will always have some kind of e-reader in my bag. I don't like reading on my phone at all, partly because I don't like reading on phone screens at length, but also because there are the other distractions there. So having an e-ink device with you, be it a Kindle or a Kobo or whatever, that is more distraction free and a nicer screen to read on, I personally think is just as good as having a physical book. The next one then is retrain your brain. I thought this was a good one and an interesting one, but it really just comes back down to that point of try reading and see how you get on. So the tip here is really that, like exercise, reading is something you can build up over time, and a good way to start would be to set yourself a target of reading 10 pages at a time. So read 10 pages, see how you feel after that, read 10 more pages. If you're out of the habit of reading, I think that's actually a really, really good tip. The fourth one then is work out your optimum place and time for reading. And this is something I've talked about in some of my videos about reading more, is figuring out when you can get distraction-free reading, when you're not going to be distracted by anything external, but you're also not going to be distracted by your own brain, so that you can really sit down for an extended period and just focus on a book and really get into that book. And I find, particularly when I'm starting a new book, that's what I like to do, is start it in a way that means I'm going to be able to give it my undivided attention for a period of time and really get into it. And then once a book has got you hooked, you don't necessarily need that anymore. But I think, that building that initial relationship with the book is really important. So yeah, I think this is a good one. But my other tip on this kind of links back to the previous one, which is read whenever you can. So try and make dedicated time for reading, but also always have a book with you, so that if you do end up with a spare 5 minutes when you can read, then you've got something with you that you can read. So you don't only have to read in that really focused way. You can do reading in short bursts as well. But as I say, when you're first getting into a book, it's quite good to try and do it in a focused way. So the next one is one that I definitely agree with, albeit there's one thing they say here which I disagree with. So the overarching statement is, don't treat reading as if it's a chore. I 100% agree with that. As I said at the start, I read for pleasure, I read for enjoyment. I think if you do that, you are much more likely to be a successful and contented reader than if you are constantly trying to read things because other people say they are good. If you're constantly trying to read, Booker Prize winners and things like that, rather than books that are purely entertaining, I think you are probably setting yourself up for failure, unless you're a very particular kind of reader. So I mostly read for entertainment. Occasionally I will try and read something a bit more challenging, but most of my reading, probably at least 80% of my reading, is stuff that I read for fun. The statement I don't agree with in here is, they say you need to begin with books for pleasure and joy in order to work up to things that really challenge you. I don't think you have to work up to things that really challenge you. You can if you want to, but that certainly shouldn't be the goal for everyone. The goal for everyone should be to have fun reading. Finally then, number 6, which I agree with half of. So the first part of it is, don't forget audiobooks. So I definitely agree with that. I think audiobooks are a great way of consuming books. I listen to at least one audiobook a month, and I really, depending on the book, I really enjoy the experience. I find it, in terms of my understanding of the book and my appreciation of the book after I finished it, I don't find any distinction between audiobooks and physical or digital books. For me, it's exactly the same. The words go into my brain, they're just going in via my ears rather than via my eyes. So I really don't think there's a difference. The second part of this statement I do disagree with, though, which is, and good TV. So they're suggesting here that you can consume stories via TV, and that's similar, that's the same as reading, which I completely disagree with. I agree that you can consume great stories via TV. There are many great TV shows out there. There are many great movies out there, and you can enjoy the stories and the characters and all of those things. But it's not the same as reading. The thing for me about reading, be it reading a physical book or a digital book or listening to an audiobook, is your brain interprets the words and creates your own images, your own pictures of the characters, your own interpretation of events. TV and movies don't allow you to do that in the same way, because they visually present to you what everything looks like, basically. So you're not making your own pictures, you're not interpreting the story in the same way as you do with reading. So definitely disagree with the second half of that. So those are my thoughts on these 6 tips from The Guardian. As I said at the start, my kind of overarching tip is, read for pleasure, find books that you're going to enjoy, make dedicated time to read those, and try and avoid distractions. If you can do all of those things, you will probably read more. And if you're someone who's fallen out of the habit of reading completely, I think those are really good tips to get you back into it. But do let me know in the comments what you think of these 6 tips. Let me know if you've got any tips of your own. And as always, thanks very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.